Okay, thank you very much for your participation. This is a special smart discussion we are doing today. First of all, I like to thank to Geoff Morgan. That is always a very, very, very good to have him with us. Geoff is a worldwide well-known thinker and a person that, in fact, is always speaking with us about the future, about what's going on. And we have had with him last year about his new book, and I know that most of the people that are here read his new book and know about it. And you have also with us Filipe Santos, that is the Dean of Portuguese Business Catholic University. He also teaches in INSEAD. He was yesterday in INSEAD in Fontainebleau in Paris, teaching about this social innovation. So I think it will be a very interesting conference. Today is a special day. Filipe, pode mudar. Today is a special day because, in fact, Diogo Vasconcelos, that was a good friend of almost all of us, if he was with us today, he would celebrate 55 years. And for us, it's always very important to remember Diogo as a person, as a friend, and special as someone that was, in fact, very keen on having an idea for a better future for society, for economy. I was a very good friend of Diogo. Most of you were also very good friends of Diogo. And I think that with this smart discussion today, we can remember the work he had done in this work. Today, we will do something quite different. Before passing to Geoff and to Filipe, we have here with us Carlos Brazão, that was a very good friend of Diogo. He was the general manager of Cisco in Portugal. He will stay with us only 20 minutes, but because of that, I will give him 3, 4, 5 minutes so that he can speak a little bit about Diogo, remember his memory, and then I'll pass to Geoff and to Filipe. Carlos, please.
Oh, thanks a lot, Jaime, and delighted to be with everybody. It's funny. It's 15 years now that it should be now the 55th anniversary of Diogo. That means that was 15 years ago. Me and Jaime were together at the house, at the home of Diogo. I remember it very well in Porto, celebrating his 40th anniversary with some good friends. So I cannot but feel some saudade from those times and from his presence. And I know, and saudade is a word that is very difficult to translate into English. So I think I was the big responsible for Diogo after his times in the government coming to Cisco. I remember he was a very unique personality. I remember when he joined Cisco, he was trying to help me like 2 or 3 times per day, until one day I almost had to tell him, Diogo, slow down a little bit. I don't need that much help. And because it was his nature always tries to help the other ones. So one of the funny things that I like to remember is he used to call, I think we were very complementary. He was the inspiring leader for innovation. I was more the execution type of manager, but doing a lot of development work in the background. He used to call me o grande conspirador, which is, I think in English, is the great conspirer. Honestly, if he was here today, I think we would have a lot of fun together, because eventually I left Cisco. I started afterwards conspiring around the project that probably some of you know, which is I'm conspiring about solving the airport problem in Portugal. We have this project for an airport in Santarém, and I'm sure that if Diogo was here with us, he would be having a lot of fun with me. He would be calling me again every day, proposing to help me 3 times per day. And I think this time I would have enjoyed from his help, maybe not 3 times per day, but 5 times per day. So I think I miss him. I think he would be having a lot of fun today with me. And I think we would have a lot of fun if he was here today with us. So with this fond memory of him, I will pass the ball back to you, Jaime. Okay. Before I get too emotional about this.
Yes, Carlos, thank you very much. Okay, it was a very impressive testimony. And now I'm passing to Geoff and to Filipe. They I think
Thank you.
you'll also speak about Diogo and speak about the social innovation. So this is our topic that we're going. Geoff.
Well,
Now
thank you
it's your
very
time.
much, Jaime, and it's good to be here speaking with Philippe, who I've seen speak many times. So hopefully we can complement. And I probably didn't know Diogo as long as some of you. I only knew him for about three or 4 years, but we had a very intense time working together. A little bit, as Carlos said, on the phone all the time, traveling, doing projects, getting things underway. And I think he had exactly the right mix of skills and contacts which the social innovation field needed at that time to be able to straddle government and politics, business, civil society, making stuff happen. And together we worked on creating the Social Innovation Exchange, which will go strong, on designing the European Union's policies and strategies, which are quite large scale now. And I always saw him as very much someone who sowed seeds. He was an initiator, a catalyst. Some people are catalysts, some people are not. And that was his nature, which probably meant he got bored with things quite quickly and moved on. But it was always, as Carlos said, fun to be with him. And like all of you, I really miss him. It was an extraordinary, tragic, act of fate when he was so suddenly taken away. So what I thought I might do is say a little bit about what happened to the seeds he sowed, where we are, and maybe a little bit about what happens next. He was very much in my mind on Thursday and Friday last week, which was a gathering in Amsterdam of business for good, over 1,000 people involved in the B Corp movement, in a whole range of businesses from Natura in Brazil to Patagonia to Danone, who are trying to almost reinvent business. And the B Corps didn't exist when Diogo was alive, but they're one of many examples of really the spirit I think he embodied of trying to integrate business and the social. So 5 minutes I will say about what I think has happened since 2010, and in part is the realization of many of the seeds which he put into the ground. And quite a lot has happened. Social innovation has become much more organized, much more mainstream than it was when I was working with him. That is true in relation to finance. So the flows of finance have been transformed beyond recognition, and Philippe will talk about this maybe. So we have wholesale banks. I was involved in setting one up in the UK. We have lots of social venture, social impact investment funds of all kinds, many government funds. Here, France, Sweden, Canada has $1 billion social investment fund. And this was in a way the crucial missing thing in the 2000s was there were great projects, great initiatives, great social entrepreneurs, but it was very hard to get the right kind of capital, the right kind of financial support, the right kind of asset classes. And although there's still a long way to go, that set of problems is partly solved and is reaching a level of maturity, which is dramatically different from 2010. We've also seen many governments have quite comprehensive strategies and policies for social innovation. Again, Canada's a good example. All the Scandinavian countries, the Netherlands, countries like Slovenia, South Korea, many examples. And I recently wrote a piece trying to take stock of what had been learnt from these policy programs for social innovation. I won't summarize that now, but again, they cover everything from new legal forms to public procurement to finance, to sort of incubators and test beds. And I think Diogo would have been very excited to see how much happened there. There's also been, a wave of movement in academia. I'm now an academic, some of the time at least, and there are many centers of research. There are many courses. in social innovation, social entrepreneurship, social investment. This has become pretty mainstream within the university world. And that's reflected in streams of books, and there are journals, and there are conferences. And again, there was almost nothing in the 2000s, or very little. And now there's a proper field, a discipline which has, in-depth, impressive bodies of research. And then finally, I think that is all fed by energy, by sort of grassroots activism. And there are so many, to my mind, amazing examples from the grassroots, like in India, the Honeybee Network, which is all about bottom-up social innovation. There's the Maker Movement, which is, again, a quite different approach to social innovation. The whole open source software movement, all of these have gathered, I think, confidence and energy. And one of my jobs in the last 10 years working at Nesta was running funds for social innovation, but also trying to systematize what was learned, systematize the methods, running training courses of all kinds. And that, as I say, gives a level of organization to the field which was missing. And Diogo was an organizer. He was a creator. So I think he would have approved of that. There is a negative story, though, which I think is worth also mentioning, that in some respects, we've had backlashes. We've had things going in the wrong direction. Obviously, the years when we were getting this going were also the years of the financial crash, and in many parts of the world haven't quite recovered from the 2007-8 crash. And there have been serious backward movements in some countries. Turkey, where Erdogan now looks set on re-election, has a very lively social innovation movement. And indeed, SIX held one of its big gatherings there in Istanbul, I think 3 years ago. But they feel in battle. They are fighting against the president. They're fighting against his party. They're fighting against pressures towards authoritarianism. 10, 12 years ago, we did a lot in China. There was, again, a lively social innovation field and investment and foundations and huge creativity, but it's become much harder for all of those people to operate as President Xi has also tightened control, made it much harder for NGOs to operate, almost sucked the oxygen out of the field. That is also true in Russia and many other countries. So this hostile environment for social innovation is also part of what we face now, and things look much more favorable in some ways in 2010. The more negative side also came out from a study I helped run last year, which we did with the United Nations, which studied global research and development. And there we were trying to look at how much was R&D aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals, all of those goals around health, equality, environment. And the main message we found was there was a pretty dramatic misalignment. There was still far more money going into the military innovation or into just old-fashioned hardware, and the amounts going into social innovation were still very small compared to the need at a time of huge needs for progress on mental health or on climate change and so on. So there's a positive and there's a negative. And finally, I might just spend 1 minute or 1 or 2 minutes on the future. I think one response to this sort of conflicting patterns is some new areas of interest for social innovation. One is politics itself. How do you innovate in the very forms of politics itself, with citizen assemblies or participatory budgeting or online democracy? And in Taiwan, for example, there the digital minister uses the language of social innovation for the reinvention of democracy to make it better fit the 21st century. There's obviously huge interest in how do you use AI and new generations of technology and that may be for helping to spot social problems, to prevent them, to predict them, or again, as part of these democratic innovations, tools like the polis, artificial intelligence. I work a lot on net zero, and this is one of these fields where there's, for example, the European Union runs net zero cities, 100 cities sharing experiences and methods, some of which is about physical hardware and energy grids and batteries and solar, but a lot of it is about social change, how we change our behaviors, our lifestyles, and food waste, and so on. And this is very live for me in a project I'm currently chairing for the European Union, which I think Diogo would have been a great participant in, where we're looking at whole of government innovation. How does the whole of a government align its ministries, its agencies, but also its work with business and civil society around things like net zero or the use of artificial intelligence? And we're running that this year. Hopefully some of the findings will be of interest in Portugal as well as elsewhere across Europe. So in summary, I think Diogo was a fantastic initiator, a catalyst, a sower of seeds. Many of those seeds have gone on to flourish, and say the European institutional commitment to social innovation is pretty strong still, with the prize which was set up in his memory. The Social Innovation Competition has done fantastic work over the last, I guess, 10, 11 years. In terms of funds, the linking it to regional funds, linking it to digital social innovation, and so on. But I think we also need to recognize that it's far less than is needed. And even some of these gains are fragile because there are powerful contrary forces, particularly coming from politics. And part of our job is to make sure they are resisted. So hopefully that's enough to get the conversation going from me. And we hand over.
Thank you very much, Geoff. It was perfect and a very good introduction to the open discussion. Now we have with us Philippe. Philippe is now the Dean of Business Catholic Business School in Portugal and in Lisbon. And he also teaches in INSEAD. He was also very, very keen on these matters of social innovation. Philippe, thank you very much for your time, okay?
Thank you, Jaime, and hello, Geoff, and hello, everyone. Very happy to be in this session, particularly one that that celebrates the life and the ideas of Diogo. I didn't know Diogo intimately. I was at the time very much based in France and a bit around the world, but I remember two deeper conversations with him about 15 years ago. And Diogo was the type of person that you only meet him a couple of times, but you remember for life the conversations that you have with him. One was on a bus going to an event that we happened to sit next to each other, and the ideas that we exchanged in that 17 years ago, a half an hour conversation are still present in my mind, and that's the kind of person that Diogo was for the benefit of all of us. As Jaime mentioned, I came tired but inspired from 4 days of teaching to 30 amazing social innovators in Fontainebleau in the last 4 days. I arrived late last night, just in time for this session. And what I would like to maybe do, and complementing Geoff's excellent presentation, was on one hand to take us back to the grassroots, to the base of social innovation, which is the social entrepreneurs and the impact entrepreneurs, how we call them these days, and then take it to a higher level, but giving you a few examples of the ideas that I learned from this weekend. Because about 20 years ago, when I met the first social entrepreneurs and social innovators, I realized that they were really the engine of innovation for society, that capitalism and markets are focused on a set of things, and they do those set of things well, but they neglect a whole host of areas where value can be created. And social innovators were the ones looking at the specific issues in society, the specific problems that no one was seeing, the neglected areas, the excluded people, and were finding clever entrepreneurial solutions to those issues. And just to give you a couple of examples, Anya from Canada, in her university studies, had a panic attack. And she suffered from panic attacks a few times during her young adulthood. So she looked online for an app that could help her, and she couldn't find any resource that was useful at the time. It was about 3 years ago. And then she created her own resource. She started investigating what could be helpful against panic attacks, how one could deal with them. Then she had the idea of helping other people with the issue, created an app, a set of resources by herself, hired a part-time coder, launched an app, discovered everything by herself on how to do digital marketing without doing marketing organically and virally, what was needed. And in 2 years, grew her app to 2.5 million users, and recently hired a part-time assistant to help her because it was too many people for her alone to deal with her part-time developer. So with 2 people, 2 full-time equivalents, she was having an app with 0 marketing budget that had reached 2 million people. Why? Because exactly she was touching upon a focus issue that was neglected in society, which was anxiety, but specifically panic attacks, focusing on the issue. She come out with a solution and was able to scale that solution to a significant size, bootstrapping and self-funding. And sometimes I look at what we do with our societal money and how we sometimes pour billions into companies like Uber, Bolt, and Glovo to see which one will eventually win the market, winner takes all. And in the meanwhile, they have multi-billion dollars of losses for many, many years. And if a fraction of that money was going to, and is starting to go, but probably needs to go more, to social innovators, we probably would live in a different society. So that's one example. Another example was Wendy, that is a major in classical studies in history. And what she's doing, she developed a new type of grass that can grow very efficiently in marginal lands that are not arable. And when mixed in the right way, it can replace wood in many applications, including furniture making. And so instead of a company like IKEA cutting down several billions of trees yearly to produce a lot of furniture, they can incorporate these grass and 20 or 25% of it can be incorporated in the wood compounds that they utilize. And she has proven she had patented the product, proven in 100 acres the ability to grow this type of grass and to usefully integrate it into the value chain of large furniture manufacturers. Had done her first strategic partnership with one such large corporation, namely IKEA, actually, because IKEA is trying to be much more sustainable in what they do. And she had 5 people in her team, but aiming to grow to 50,000 acres in 2 years, really with a circular economy mindset from the start. And a final example to get us going, it's amazing how in African countries, for example, in Senegal, there is no local brand of baby food. So a mother wants to feed her child and she will have to use imported baby food from big companies that is produced globally in a different country, that's transported to that city and is not adapted to the local needs, doesn't use local produce, it's just something very generic. So she, recognizing that gap, she created a local brand of baby food, went from her kitchen to a house and now to a warehouse, self-funded as well, and has created a brand that is organic, that is based on local products that mothers love. She's growing very fast. Now big retailers are actually buying from her because they want to stock the shelves with the product, because also retailers want to be more sustainable and more buying more local products and local brands. And so this is the engine of social innovators. This is and I think they represent the best of entrepreneurial drive, of entrepreneurial effort, And sometimes they represent an attitude that we sometimes forget. For example, Wendy, the one that was produced in the grass, it's true that there is not a lot of R&D investments compared to what is needed, but a lot of these people are actually bootstrapping R&D, sourcing some research to local laboratories, and are able 10 times cheaper than large companies or large initiatives to find out amazing social innovations. And so, to some extent, this is a powerful engine of innovation in society. We now, as Jeff was saying, we have gone a long way in these last 10 years, recognizing these innovators, giving them more financing, building an ecosystem of support around social innovators. And that has been mostly positive around the world in different countries. There are some trends that are quite interesting and that offer promise for the future, despite some of the challenges that Jeff identified, of some misalignment and some lack of resources. One is the corporations can play a major role in infusing social innovation in their value chains, inspired by social entrepreneurs, and making their activities more sustainable. And sometimes these innovators, and all of them were now small, medium-sized companies having 5 people, but major ambitions, having 50 people, 100 people, and growing in these difficult contexts and tough challenges, growing their organizations to 1,000 or 2,000 people to scale is not easy. But if they are plugging their innovations and scaling them through corporations is a major avenue for scaling that benefits the innovator, the company, and the world. We have examples of that. For example, many of you know the story of Specialstern working on autism, that in a partnership with the SAP, the software company, created a program called Autism at Work that integrated people with autism in the workforce of SAP, first in one office, then in multiple branches in Germany, then across different countries. Then, of course, other tech companies imitated SAP, and now integrating people with autism in the workforce becomes something normal or more normal that people should do and are doing, when before it was an invisible problem and 80% of people with autism were unemployed and had no career or no prospects of being autonomous. In this movement of social innovation, there's a fundamental approach, which I still find different from the traditional social sector, is that people have plenty of potential and plenty of capacity for improving their situation if their context supports them and helps them. And most of the times the context actually pulls them down or doesn't offer opportunities. For example, we have millions of immigrants running away from Venezuela because of the disaster happening in the country, to the neighboring countries, to Colombia and Chile and others, millions. One of the entrepreneurs that with whom I was today were offering financial inclusion to these millions of refugees and migrants, offering them a bank credit, offering them a credit card, offering them cheap money transfers with which they could send money back to Venezuela to feed their families in Venezuela who were starving, and basically trusting these people to pull again up and be able to rebuild their lives and support the people they left behind in Venezuela when they left looking for a better life. Another example, in terms of language learning, a Swiss social innovator was using peer-to-peer models in which children were teaching other children about languages through funny, interesting videos, driving the TikTok generation and using the TikTok mentality for impact and for learning. So these are examples, and many of these innovations can be usefully integrated into the valuation of companies. I see companies more attentive to this issue, and this is something that could be a major drive that could actually lead to a lot of value creation. So this is one element. The other element is the possibility of these social innovators improving public policies because by being a signal and alert to issues of neglect, and by using these empowerment techniques to believe in the people they are helping, they are part of the solution. So they are not poor people that need help. They are people that can be empowered to be contributors to society. This approach can actually change the nature of public policy from this more social mentality of let's help the poor, disadvantaged people, to let's create a context that leverages the potential of these people and empowers them. So this change in mindset, I don't think our traditional social sector has fully made this change in mindset, and it still supports activities and charity of that basically sometimes creates people more dependent on aid instead of actually being risen from their feet and more empowered to assume autonomy in their life. So this, I think, is an important mindset that needs to be changed, that social innovators are bringing. And the final point is many of our industries and sectors have very entrenched structures that over time have become more rigid and are not leading to good outcomes. For example, in the health sector, in the educational sector, there are a lot of weaknesses. And we see a lot of small innovations in education, in health around these systems, but it's hard for these innovations to penetrate and really change the system. So more work at the system change level, more academic work, more practice work, more movement work around system change, I think could offer great potential for value creation in society. So I would identify these three areas that offer a potential of opportunity for the future: the strategic partnerships between social innovators and large corporations, the integrating ideas about empowerment and autonomy and innovation in public policy and public and social policy, and the idea of promoting more avenues for system change, which we know is not an easy practice, but it's very important. The good news is that we have two drivers of change that are very powerful. Jeff mentioned briefly the issue of digital social innovation. Some of these models that before were very difficult to scale, now with digital become very scalable, which gives an additional lever of opportunity for social entrepreneurs and for society. So digital social innovation will be an area with plenty of developments and plenty of potential in the years to come, which can also attract more financing. And we are now also on the financing side. We've seen the rise of impact investing very strongly. And impact investing, initially, they were supporting not-for-profit models, for-profit models, but now it seems that the engine of growth is the area of impact investing linked to impact entrepreneurship, where the money is being allocated for the scaling of for-profit social innovation models that are mission-oriented but use business approaches. So this is one of the most active areas of development. And I think it offers great promise to bring more attention to value creation into our market principles and market dynamics. So I see, despite the challenges, I see a lot of opportunity for improvement. And I also see elements in the ecosystem that can lead us and point us in the right directions. I think with this, I have maybe used my
yes, it was fantastic, and I think
and we'll open up to questions.
Yes, the idea is that we can organize, as usual, three sets of three questions or comments. Today, I will start by Ana Gonçalves Pereira, that is here with us. Ana used to work in association in the past, not now, of course, that Diogo was president, APDC, and I know that she is a lot involved in these themes of social innovation, caring. Anna, do you want to make any comment, any question to Geoff or to Philippe? And thank you very much for becoming with us.
Thank you, Jaime. Yes, Philippe, you talked about digital social innovation. How can we engage tech companies into this area of business? Because I think they are still very, very far away.
Okay, this is your question. Okay, we'll pass to another person who will organize three questions. Luís Neves, you are with us, right? Luís is organizing this year, like last year in Portugal, a very big event committed with the Digital for Purpose. He is responsible for JESSI, that is a worldwide organization connected with the telecommunications and with the digital. Luis, do you want to make any comment and question to Geoff or to Philippe? And I think you knew also Diogo. I don't know if you want also to remember Diogo, but very briefly, okay?
Very briefly, Jaime, thank you so much. Let me say three things about Diogo. I met him in 2008. He came to visit me at Deutsche Telekom at the time. We did a joint project that I think many people in Portugal has not looked into it. I would recommend still today to have a look into it. The project was called Smart 2020. It was based on a report that at the time we did at GFT. And so about Diogo, 5 things: a real leader, very smart, visionary, a doer, and an aggregator. I only had the opportunity to share with him maybe 5 or 6 months of my life, but I was impressed with this dynamic, and I only have very, very good memories about him. So thank you so much, Jaime, to give me this opportunity to mention him.
You want to make any comment on the question to Geoff or to Philippe?
No, thank you.
Okay. We have also with us Jacques Caldeira. Jacques, are you listening? Okay, José Carlos is one of the champions.
Yes, I'm sorry, John.
Okay, José Carlos is one of the
I'm
champions we have here in Portugal about innovation. He was the president of National Innovation Agency some years ago, and he's committed with lots of projects in Europe. Do you want to make any comment about social innovation with Philippe and Geoff?
Just a very short one. There is nothing much I can say after these 2 excellent interventions. Just that it's really amazing the growing of social innovation in the last years, and also the public attention to social innovation. I remember that some years ago, I got a student that came to me saying in a course I was giving that she would like to make a work regarding the lack of instruments to support social innovation in our funding instruments, in our funding landscape. And actually, she made quite an interesting work comparing and seeing how the existing instruments could not fit to fund or to support social innovation. And it was interesting because something like 1 year later, the first instruments in 2018 to support social innovation came up. So also this is a sign of the importance that is given for this dimension. Of course, it's a very special dimension. Sometimes we need to sometimes it appears that you need to combine or to align conflicting objectives, but I think that we have already enough examples, good examples that there is here a high potential, particularly to deal with some of the new challenges that the world is facing, and clearly cannot be solved with, let's say, the traditional approaches. So just a small comment from my side. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And a final comment in this round of questions. Orlando Monteiro Silva, you are also involved in these topics of innovation, social, things like that. Do you want to make any comment to Geoff or to Philippe, please? We are not listening, Orlando. Okay.
Sorry. Yes, well, my comment, my topic will be more.
Or any question you want to make? Okay.
Yeah, it was precisely a question regarding the difference between innovation and inclusion in terms of efficiency. So, is there any comment about this issue?
Okay. So, Geoff, can you comment on these first topics? I don't know if you want to comment on Philippe topics, and then I ask Philippe, and then we make a second round, okay?
Or maybe I might make 3 comments.
Okay.
So the first is about the digital industries. So my PhD is in telecommunications, so I'm a lover of digital technology. That's just probably why one of the reasons I got on with Diogo. But I think we still have a problem that the large digital companies haven't worked out the best ways of collaborating with social innovators,
yes,
communities and entrepreneurs. They're still very late. I was involved in many projects using mobile mobiles for social innovation, but this was 10 or 15 years after everyone got a mobile phone. Artificial intelligence is repeating that, where AI for social good is happening far later than AI for the military or AI for click-through advertising. One partial exception to that is India. And actually, I'm more and more think we need to learn from other parts of the world. So in India, there's a number of joint projects of big business and platforms and social innovators around education, around health, around the India stack, which is now being exported to many countries. I was just this afternoon looking at ONDC, which is worth looking at if you haven't. This is the use of new platforms for strengthening very local economies. Anyway, there's a lot happening there, which I think is more as ahead of North America or Europe in making the most of digital technology for social good, just as countries like Taiwan have gone beyond us in innovating around democracy. Secondly, very quick word on efficiency. In a way, part of what social innovators say is that what looks efficient in market terms may be very inefficient in other terms. And food waste is a good example, which was one of the topics of the European Social Innovation Prize. From a business point of view, it may be fine to throw away a third of food or a half of your food because you're making a profit. But from an ecological or social point of view, it is madness. And this is where economic concepts of efficiency are often very anachronistic. And finally, just to echo what Philippe said, often I think the greatest virtue of social innovation is seeing people not in terms of just their needs, what they don't have, but also seeing them in terms of strengths. And one of the best examples of that is one I've been working with in Australia, which is called TAXI, the Australia Centre for Social Innovation, which mobilizes families really struggling with problems, but instead of seeing them as the problem, they use them to help other families. It's called Family by Family, and completely inverts this whole logic of just seeing people as victims, as needy of charity. Instead, it's about empowering them to solve their own problems and in ways which can then spread and scale. Many other things to say, but I'll shut up there.
Okay. Philippe, do you want to make any comment towards Luis and
Yes, yes, let me touch upon, but maybe in relative order of the intervention. So digital social innovation, interestingly, I think it's not the tech, as Jeff and Anya was implying, it's not the tech companies that are more advanced in working with social innovators. They are usually the less advanced. There are other companies, the ones that deal more with the day-to-day world, that have large employee workforces and see the issues in those workforces, that deal with products and services that are more tangible and see some of the inefficiency in the value chain. They tend to be more open and see the value of working with social innovators. Maybe the winner takes all, the rapid pace in tech companies limits their time and ability to look around and understand other issues more broadly, other than the competitive issue that they are facing. But the power of digital social innovation in the way that it's framed today is that a social entrepreneur these days does not need to go to a tech company for anything, because they have access to technology at a very low cost and very available, to amazing computer power, just paying a fee, to digital mobile technologies. They can, easily through technology, access millions of people. So without having to have important investments to start with, or without needing the authorization of anyone, they can actually, if they're really focusing on an essential, important problem that connects and resonates with people, they can reach millions very quickly through technology. And that empowers social innovators in a way that before was very difficult to do, given their low visibility and low legitimacy in society. And the other thing is that one of the issues that was pulling back social innovation was that even when a very powerful model was created, typically it involved working with people, providing a service, or producing a product in a better way, and scaling that was very difficult. Scaling from 10 to 100 would be okay, from 100 to 1,000, but to change the world, we need to go to 1 million. And that jump like 100-fold in size was very difficult to achieve in the social innovation sector because the ecosystem was not there, the funding was not there, and sometimes the management ability was not there. But with digital technologies, a small team can reach the world with an innovative technology. And because often social innovators use this idea, they use other clients or beneficiaries as part of the solution. They actually can scale leveraging each other's in peer-based models. For example, Wikipedia is a great example of something that scaled globally with not a very large team because it was leveraging the volunteer capability of many, many millions of users that wanted to share and contribute their knowledge. So this mindset actually allows for scale, and digital is the enabler of scale. So this will bring the opportunity for ideas that before would stay small and unprofitable to actually become profitable and scale, because they can scale hugely as they scale massively. Even if they generate a little revenue, they actually can become profitable, which will attract more investment. So this is the first point. The second, I think the second and third questions, I think, are connected about the conflicting goals that sometimes exist in social enterprises and about this balance between innovation and inclusion. We know by economic theory and results that the drivers of market-based competition actually leads companies to try to maximize their profits by focusing on the clients that can afford their products. And then it's a game of how much do they like or need my brand or my product. And often in the market dynamics, 10 to 20% of society is somewhat excluded or left behind because they don't have the right skills, they don't have enough income to access products or services that are valuable, or they access them at a much higher cost per unit than others, which is also unfair. And so the promise of social innovation is that by focusing on the specific issues of those excluded segments, and by having a trade-off of saying, I'm not maximizing on profit, I'm satisficing on profit so that I can maximize on value creation. And companies do the opposite. They maximize on profit and satisfy on the value they create for others. And social entrepreneurs invert the economic logic. And by inverting, they can actually solve issues for more marginal segments of society, including them into the mainstream. And that creates a society that's more inclusive, that's more equal, and that is eventually more sustainable over time, because it also reduces the populism and other tendencies that we are facing in our society. So, of course, so it's not that social innovators have to trade off innovation with inclusion, but they can innovate in segments of the population that tend not to be easily included in the mainstream, and by including them, they'll make our society better. And in that process, they need to manage conflicting goals, but sometimes they find the win-win. They find the way to marry business and impact in a sustainable way, like Yunus did with microcredit in Bangladesh that spread microfinance around the world. And when they find the secret sauce, when they engineer a business and impact model that goes along together, then it's when magic happens and social innovation becomes economically sustainable and scalable.
Okay, so we are now to the final round of 3 questions so that we can have the time for an hour. Mário Franco is always here with us. He was also a friend of Diogo. Mário, do you want to make any comment and question to Geoff and to Philippe, please?
Okay, thank you, Jaime. Thank you for the 2 good presentations. First, I would like to make a short comment on Diogo. I know Diogo for many years until he died, unfortunately, and we cross a lot of times. And during my life, I only published a very, very small booklet. And one of the persons who write a short note on the book was Diogo, was about mobile television. And I remember many, many moments with Diogo, and our conversations were always very, very impacting for me. On the topic, I would like to make only two questions maybe will be answered or not, or comment by any of the speakers. The first one is, what I am following and participating in Portugal and in the ISO on the sustainable finance standard. We are doing a standard for sustainable finance inside of ISO, and it was published already, the framework, 2 months ago. My question is this: don't you think one of the problems today with social innovation is the lack of competitiveness and the lack of innovation inside of financial sector, and especially in the banks? Because if the banks make a lot of money only because the tax, the rate is growing, the credit rate is growing, then they make a lot of money immediately without doing any innovation. They just get the money from the sky, from the central banks. Then this is not very motivated for the banks to invest in anything, because they make money almost for doing nothing. That's the first question. The second and last question is related to the way how the technology companies work. I know a little bit about it. I use it. For example, I run a NGO, a no-profit, and we have special prices on almost the most important software for no-profits. And all Microsoft, Google, they create one central called On Good, and we can get the domain. And from that, you can buy from different websites licensing from all these big companies. And I use it. Actually, the price is 10 times cheaper than if you buy a license for no profit. But do you know any other examples, good example, one example on that, which can be interested for somebody? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mario. We have with us also Manuela Cajos, that usually participates in these sessions. Manuela owns a well-known education school, and she is fan also about these social innovation topics. Manuela, do you want to make any question, any topic, please? Manuela, I don't know if you are listening.
Hello. Thanks, Jaime, but I don't have any question.
No? Okay.
I like very much to listen. Thank you very much.
You don't have any question on these topics. Okay. Sorry, I think that you could have something about that. So that now it's my time to make one question to Geoff and to Luis. And the question is very simple. It has to see with the following. How do you, Geoff and Philippe, see that social innovation can be in the future within this time of uncertainty, complexity that we are having, something that can be used by governments to try to solve the gap that we are having between societies? I read some articles of Mariana Mazzucato. I know she is a colleague of in Israel. I don't know if you speak many times between them, but Mariana Mazzucato published recently an article where she defends a lot that governments and the public spending must more and more be specified with some clear objectives concerning the social area. So my question was, how do you see that in the future, within this uncertainty we are having in the public expenditures, we can have a new way to try to oblige or to incentivize the governments to have a more intervention in this area, or not? Do you think that this can be a solution by the market? Do you think that social innovation is more, as Adam Smith told in the past, a market solution? Or do you think that it's possible to try to construct something that is between the both? So this is my question. Geoff and Philippe, and then we can finish because we are approaching 1 hour. Geoff.
So very, very quickly, governments have played a central role in innovation for at least 100 years. It's strange, sometimes that was forgotten, and Mariana, my colleague, reminded people of what used to be just common sense.
Yes, of course, yes.
Japan, Germany, Korea, America, it was always obvious government was a major funder, but some economists forgot this and had to be reminded. That argument used to be a very, in some ways, traditional argument. They should just, and Mariana used to argue just for funding hardware and technology. And it's taken a bit of time, but she's come round to recognizing social innovation needs to be part of that story, particularly at a time when some of the top issues for governments are inequality, mental health, as I said earlier, the social side of net zero, not just the technology side. So to my mind, it's obvious that you need a broad, holistic approach to innovation. And then there's 30 seconds on finance. I agree with what was said about banks. One of our problems is we have a finance system where banks get the upside of risk and we carry the downside of risk. That's very inefficient, obviously, and is a drain on the economy. And one of the exciting things of the last decade has been using innovation methods in finance, in fintech, opening up competition, using open data so customers can control their own data to allow new entrants, the regulators working with the innovators. And at least in the UK, this has been a very creative process, I think. We haven't done anything like that yet for energy and other sectors, but this is one of the priorities for the next few years, is to drive, use data to drive competition and innovation in place of these oligopoly powers which suck energy and money out of the economy more than putting it in my view.
Okay, so on my side, and very quickly, and I'll start with the last point about finance. So I don't have hope or expectations that the banks will finance innovation. It's not their role. They've never done it very well. We created a whole ecosystem of financing around business angels and crowdfunding and the impact and venture capital and now impact investing that is not bank driven and that finances social innovation alongside public funding for social innovation and also foundation and funding or philanthropic funding for social innovation. Those have been the drivers of financing. Regarding banks, I'm just happy if they're well regulated and don't go bankrupt, because if they go bankrupt, then we need to bail them out. But on the other side, I think sometimes it's also, they are a bit unfairly treated in the sense they may have profits, but they also have a lot of assets installed, and that's the return on assets. So sometimes just because they are big, they seem to have a lot of profits, but if you look at the return on their assets, it's actually not very large. So they're not so profitable. So we should not count with them to support innovation, but let's also not be against them because they perform a role in the economy, in financial services, which is being partly disrupted. So we'll see what is the outcome of that. So that's on banks. Regarding Jaime's question, when we built in 2015 Portugal Social Innovation, part of the goal was exactly embedding the principles and practice of social innovation in the government, funded by European Union funding, so that it would be defended from government changes or budget cuts, but that was embedded transversally in the government. It was not something in the social security ministry, not in the education ministry, not in the health ministry. It was transversal, dependent on the president of the cabinet or the development or planning ministries, exactly to be embedded and to try to infuse new approaches and new dynamics into public policy. One of them was this important one of not look at people as in need of support, but has with the potential to be empowered and to be autonomous. And I think in some ways we have been able to achieve that. Some of the principles of innovation, social innovation, have been integrated in European Union policy and funding. That funding is informing the fact that European Commission has social innovation as a priority in the new round of structural funding, is leading all the countries, many countries, to start asking themselves, how do we support social innovation? How do we allocate this public money for social innovation? Some of them are actually coming to Portugal as to learn from what was done here in the last 7 years, which has its benefits and is relatively embedded. So I think there is, I always say to my students in different programs, let's not be ideological about social innovation. It's not about governments versus markets versus the social sector. Social innovation is a pragmatic, innovative approach to societal problems, and social entrepreneurs pragmatically work with whoever is more capable of solving that specific issue at scale, be it the government, be it the companies, be it the social sector. And the challenge is to find the right champions, the ones that believe in what we are doing and that will drive the agenda on those large organizations. And so it's more a question of engagement and finding the like-minded champions inside large corporates, inside government, inside the social sector to drive an agenda for positive change. So I think that's the hope, and that's the spirit that we want to create by developing social innovation.
Okay, Felipe, we are coming to the end, but I think that Mario wants to make a 1-2 minutes comment. Yes, Mario, please, but very, very briefly, please.
Thank you. I never did that, but thank you, Felipe, and for the comment. But I think the question is not to be against the banks or against the market. I am in favor of capitalism, to be clear. The question is, we have to solve the capitalism problems if we want to save capitalism from itself. And where in every market, and I am for free market, absolutely free market, we cannot have a free market where there is no risk, because the market is linked to risk. And the decisions made from the banks are not related to management of risk. We will not have capitalism, we have another thing. Then my position, and I just want to clarify that, is I think one of the problems with innovation in finance and investment is because some institutions, especially the banks, which are regulated as a market industry, they make money without innovation, without risk in many times. And just because it should be short, the risks they took was not about risks in innovation. The crisis, the 2008 crisis, was not because they invest in good investment or bad investment, was because they changed the system without the control of the regulators. And then I just want to say, I am in favor of capitalism, but we need to put capitalism in the financial sector in the market and not avoid to do that. It's just to clarify.
Okay, Mario, okay.
Thank
So
can I make just a comment?
Yes, please,
because after the financial crisis, banks were actually forbidden to invest in innovation, meaning they cannot invest in venture capital, they cannot put money on very risky things. So actually they are limited in what they can do. They can do lending, they can do some level of investment, but not a lot, and very regulated, and they can get deposits. So they actually, in Europe, they actually have a very stable business that is very limited in what they can do, and the innovation, the financing of innovation is happening elsewhere outside the banking system, and that is also by design. It's by how regulators design the system, and that's not necessarily bad, because other actors are more agile, and because they are not so big, if they take a bit more risky bets on some new ideas, they don't pull down a big giant. And so in that sense, I don't think there's an issue in that regard. I think in Europe, things are relatively under control in terms of financial regulation, more so than in other geographies. And I think we are developing a financial subsystem that is capable of financing entrepreneurship and social innovation and impact entrepreneurship, which is kind of the new kind of segment. And that is happening, and we are seeing that happening.
Okay. So thank you very much, Geoff. Thank you very much, Felipe. I will close with one sentence that Diogo told some months before dying to an interview to Expresso, that is one of the main journals we have here in Portugal. And he told the following: when we speak about open society, we speak about social innovation. because the main objective of social innovation is to try to make people participate, make people have a contribution to a common good. So thank you very much, Geoff. Thank you very much, Philippe. It was an amazing conversation. I think we celebrated the memory of Diogo, the work of Diogo, and with his memory, we can build the future. Thank you very much for everybody, okay? Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you very much. It was fantastic. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Boa tarde.
Boa tarde. Thank you.
Bye-bye.